Happy Wednesday, Mission Church. Pastor Tyler here. Welcome to Midweek, Mission Church at home. Once again, we're gonna have a little bit of worship, and then we're gonna a really cool, special night. We're gonna hear from a handful of people tonight on just how to flourish while you're single, and then also how to have a great marriage. It's gonna be a great night. Enjoy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. You know what time it is. It's time for another awesome midweek service, Mission Church at home. Again, hope you guys have been enjoying this, man. We've loved doing this, man, getting to worship and getting to get to know the Lord a little bit better with all of you, man. So it's been a great time. Come on, would you stand up wherever you're at in your house? Maybe you took your computer to the park. Whatever you're doing, man, we're going to worship the Lord together. All right? Let's do it. Go.
Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me. You know his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
Oh, yes, Lord. We belong to you. We belong to you. You said we're not forsaken. You said that we are chosen. Oh, Lord, we belong to you. Yes, we do. Oh, we believe it, Lord. Come on, can we sing this together again? I am chosen. Sing, I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Come on, sing that with us. Sing, I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who There's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. We're thankful for that truth today, God. That when we feel worthless, God, you say we're chosen. We feel like we're alone, you said that we are not forsaken. And I'm thankful today that we serve a God who isn't distant, he's not removed from us. He didn't just create us and say, go figure it out on your own, but we serve a God who is with us, he is present. He's in the midst of every trial, every storm, and every day of your life, and God walks with you. He wants to walk with you, he wants to be close to you. And he said in his word, man, if you draw near to me, I'll draw near to you. And that's our prayer today, God. We want to be as close to you as we could ever be. Come on, can you sing this song with me? You can't go back to the beginning. Can't control what tomorrow will bring. But I know here in the middle, is the place where you promised to be. We sing, I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? Yeah, 'cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Oh. Our hearts cry out to you, oh God. As I walk out through the valley, let your love rise above every fear. Like the sun shaping the shadow in every weakness. In my weakness, your glory appears. I want to declare this again together. I'm not enough, we sing. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Oh God, we realize we're not enough. Say, I'm not enough unless you come. Will Can we sing it just one more time? I'm not enough, say, I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here? Meet me here again, 'cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again?
Hey, thanks, Melissa and Darnell. Man, I love worship. I'm just so proud of our church and so proud of our production team. I got to give a shout out to Shane. This guy has been cranking. I got to give a shout out to Stephen Bolar. I got to give a shout out to Shelby, who's doing the words. All the production team. Great job, you guys. I'm just loving it. I got one quick announcement, and then we're going to go into the teaching. This midweek thing has been amazing. We started about 7-8 weeks ago in the middle of March, and we're finishing off April. But this is the last midweek we're going to have for a few weeks. We're going to regroup. You probably know this, but the shelter got extended now to June 1st. And so as this gets extended, one thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we're just doing the right thing in the right season. And so we're going to take a couple weeks off and come back and maybe start a prayer night, start a worship night. We're not sure yet, maybe do Devos on Wednesday nights, but we're excited to birth something new in this next season. So thank you so much for tuning in to Midweek. Are you guys ready for a great teaching? Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to transition out, and then Rachel and I are going to be here, and we're going to lead this night tonight. See you in a second. Hey, Mission Church, welcome to Midweek.
Welcome to Midweek.
Da-da-da-da-da-da. If you don't know what that is, a little bit of Sports Center for you. Hopefully we didn't break some copyright rule. This is a fun one. Rachel and I are going to be kind of hosting tonight's midweek. We have a little bit of what we want to share, but then we've got some great couples that are going to share some great wisdom with you. Real quick.
This is so fun that we get to do this together, by the way.
Very, very fun.
Also, I prepared a lot of really embarrassing stories to share about Tyler, because he always shares them about me. So that's going to be fun. Just kidding.
Buckle up, buckle up. That's going to be all night if you're actually going to do that. So we're talking about how to be single, right? Mm-hmm. How to stay single, or how?
Sure.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
I guess. Or just how to navigate the single life. What I like about both of us, we got married later in life, 29. And I feel like we learned a lot in our 20s on how to be single. And so we're going to give you some biblical stuff on that. And then we're talking about just how to have a great marriage. And even if you're single watching this, how to have a great marriage. When I was single, I learned so much about relationships from married couples. Because really, marriage is marry your best friend. How do you have a great friendship? And so stay tuned in, even if you're single, as we go into marriage stuff. You're going to learn some great stuff. So also, you heard announcements. This is our last midweek. We are wrapping up the how-to. We started this in mid-March. We've been doing this for 7 weeks now. 7 weeks. Oh, it's crazy to me. Yeah. And if I could just share a quick illustration of the heart of what we've been trying to accomplish in these last 7 weeks of how-to. There's a verse in Matthew 7, I'll read it to you. It says this: anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on a solid rock. Stop. I love this verse. You go on to you read the rest of this. It talks about when storms come, the house will stand. Basically, that this is the best way and the only way to build your life is by God's teachings. So what we've tried to do with the how-to is give you a biblical blueprint on how to build the house that God wants you to build, the life that God's called you to build, but also the tools. I think one reason why a lot of people struggle in marriage at times and in life is they don't have the right blueprint and they have no tools to build. So how can you build a great life with no tools? How can you build the dream house if you have no blueprint? You're literally building blind and you're building toolless. So what we've tried to do is give you some tools, not my ideas, but biblical verses to say, here's how you build your life. And tonight's is gonna be a good one. It's gonna be, how do I flourish as a single person? And then when I get married, how do I flourish with another person in my house? Does that sound good? Okay, sweet. Let's go into our first little segment. Does that sound good? Yeah. We're going to talk about 5 things I wish every single person knew. 5 things I wish every single person knew.
And a lot of the things that we put together tonight are based on the amazing questions that you guys sent in. So thank you so much for submitting those.
Yes and yes, exactly. So first one, 5 things we wish every person knew. I'm going to go first, and then Rachel is going to go in just a second, is get rid of baggage. Get rid of baggage. I think of that verse in Hebrews 12 where it says that watch out for those bitter roots that start to grow. And it tells us what the bitter roots do. It says it causes destruction and trouble. And so when you allow bitter roots to grow in your life, it's going to bring destruction and trouble to the things that you care most about. Something about Rachel and I getting married at 29 is everybody told us our first year of marriage was going to be terrible. They're like, oh, buckle up. Hey, oh, you're marrying an Italian. Hey, buckle up, you know. And so, oh, she's a strong career woman. Buckle up. All these kind of things. I had so many people basically scaring me like crazy. Our first year was going to be terrible. Our first year was epic. Was it? Would you agree?
It was epic. People said, beware of year 5, beware of year 7. We haven't had a terrible year yet.
Which is kind of crazy. I don't really like telling everybody that because some people are like, oh, you just wait. Maybe we'll never have a terrible year. It's been a great 8 years. It's been a great 8 years. I'm a messy person. I think that's the biggest thing you've had to deal with. I'm a loud boy in the house. She says I'm a loud boy. I'm always making loud noises. I just don't know how to be quiet. But if you are single right now, one of the greatest things you can do is actually look at your life and say, man, look, are there some bad mindsets that I've acquired from past relationships? Are there some past baggage things that I've acquired because of my parents? And I've allowed myself to operate in them because nobody's really pushed on those buttons yet. One of the greatest gifts that you can give to your friends and your future spouse, if your heart is to be married one day, is simply this. Get rid of those bitter roots. Don't bring bitter roots because really the root starts to show symptoms of things. You'll get in a fight and you'll shut down. I remember, if I could be honest, if Rachel would have married me at 22, I would have been a nightmare. I mean, we would have had to be in marriage counseling for years after years. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You would have been a nightmare. Yeah. But there's just something about those 9 years of my 20s before we got married. Man, I went through breaking. I went through really just asking myself, man, why do I process this way? I used to write people off. I used to always have to be right. I didn't know how to say sorry. And now I say sorry really quick, almost too quick for Rachel. She's like, do you even mean the sorry? I was like, oh, I mean the sorry.
You're definitely better at it in our relationship than I am. I'm still a work in progress on that.
Pray for her. Okay. Rachel, go ahead and go number two.
So we got a lot of questions in about contentment. And something that I learned when I was single is if you're not a joyful person when you're single, you're not going to become a joyful person when you get married. If you're not a content person when you're single, you're not going to just magically become content person when you're married. These are things that I really stewarded in my life and I really wrestled through. And I'd honestly gotten to a point where I was really happy to stay single because I knew that my life was going to be great. But I was actually really scared of ending up in a bad marriage because I knew that could break me.
Yeah.
And so I honestly gotten to that point. Two of my favorite verses at that time were delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart in Psalm 37. And also seek first the kingdom of God, live righteously, and all these things will be added to you in Matthew. And as I really started to lean into those verses and, not just sort of think them and understand them, but actually like lean in, like really, really start being transformed by those verses. I actually found that the source of my soul's greatest contentment was in the first half of the verse. It really was. It was in the delighting myself in the Lord. It was in the seeking first the kingdom of God. And then as all these things got added to my life, those things are wonderful, but they took their proper place. They weren't idols anymore. Marriage you've complemented my life. You didn't complete me. Career complemented what God was doing in my life. It didn't bring me joy. It wasn't the source of my contentment. For those of you who have kids, it's the same thing. Because that's a really scary and kind of unhealthy burden to put on somebody in your life that they would become the source of your joy or your contentment. Yeah. Those are really things that you have to work out in your singleness time.
I like that. And I'll say it, like contentment is sexy. Like, I'm going to use that word. Contentment is sexy. Can I say that at church? I said it. One of the things that I realized about Rachel and I when we started dating is I had dated a lot of girls in my life, but she was the first woman I dated.
Thank you.
You're welcome. She carried herself differently. She had this, like, I don't need you kind of vibe. Not in a way like woman, hear me roar, you mean nothing to me. But it was like she had this contentment that she had with the Lord that I didn't define her value. And to me, as a guy pursuing a girl, it was so attractive to me that I didn't feel this pressure that I had to meet this need in her life that only God can meet. And so, man, contentment, that's such a good one. I love that. So I'm just going to piggyback real quick. My third one that I wish every single person would know is move slow to move fast. Move slow to move fast. I'm going to say it another way. Have standards. Like, just don't date the first person who comes up to you, or just don't date the person that's around. Don't just date the first person you don't want to swipe left on whatever app it is. Is it swipe left or swipe right, right? I've never...
I don't know.
We were before that age.
Swipe left, right?
We were Facebook and MySpace. You liked pictures when you were telling somebody you liked them.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I think of a
Good
couple.
old days.
Yeah, the good old days. And here's why you move slow to move fast. Marrying potential is dangerous.
Yeah.
It's one of the most dangerous things. I'll use a kind of a childish illustration, but if your husband or the person you're dating picks his nose now, he's gonna pick his nose when he's married. I think a lot of people think they can change their spouse. We don't change our spouses. God changes people. And so one of the things I think of in Proverbs 21, it says Proverbs 21, better to live in a corner of a roof than to share a house with a quarrelsome wife.
Whew.
And so, oof.
Goes both ways.
Yes. Proverbs 21,
true,
another
though.
one, it says, it's better to live alone in the desert than with a quarrelsome spouse.
Wow.
Live alone in the desert than a quarrelsome spouse. I'm gonna give you a quick little thing. When Rachel and I were dating, we dated for 5 months, and then we broke up for 9 months. Isn't that crazy? And then we dated again for 5 months. I saw Rachel navigate for 3 years. And when I wanted to propose to Rachel and marry Rachel, something I processed was our life together. Like, I wanted to change the world. I wanted to plant a church one day. Like, I wanted to enjoy my life just as much as I enjoyed it single. And I just saw how Rachel navigated. Like, she wasn't somebody who would have really high highs and low lows. She wasn't somebody who was a nasty person. She was kind. She was consistently joyful. There's just something special about the way she navigated her life. And so when you're actually trying to find the person, because a lot of people, to be honest, what we notice even with the single questions, is a lot of people who desire to find a spouse. I think that's a great thing, but just don't rush the process. Yeah. Don't settle. Oh, settling is one of the worst. Do not settle. Do not go, that's just the way they are. Man, have some standards in your life. Yeah. God, who you marry, I'm gonna put it this way. Can I say this? I'm gonna say it this way. Who you marry makes or breaks you.
It's true.
I mean, my life, the way it is now, Rachel has propelled me. My life is better because of Rachel. Shout out. I'm winning points right now, yay. But yeah, move slow to move fast. I feel like Rachel and I did not rush the process to get married, and ever since then, we've been running together. Yeah. Oh, we've been running and enjoying life together. Go for Rachel, number 4.
So I'm going to talk about guarding your heart. And I think growing up in church, I know we talked a lot about the dangers of sexual promiscuity, right? But we didn't often talk about the dangers of emotional promiscuity.
That's good.
And I think that could be just as damaging if you give your heart away to somebody before it's time. Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart. That's a pretty intense statement. Song of Songs says, don't awaken love too early. And we don't just awaken love through the physical. We can awaken love through the things that we say to each other, through going to places emotionally that we shouldn't go until we're ready to go there. And Tyler shared a little bit of this. You may not know our story, but we did. We dated for 5 months. And then we broke up for 9 months. And in those first 5 months, at the time it was painful, but looking back, Tyler never said things to me like, you're the love of my life and I want to marry you, because he didn't know yet. And so then we broke up for 9 months. And when he came back to me and he said those things, which is very romantic, by the way, it's a great story, we'll share it with you sometime, I actually believed him because he hadn't said those things to me before and then taken them back. He hadn't been reckless with my heart. He hadn't been reckless with his heart. He hadn't said I was the love of his life and then we broke up. And so honestly, I trusted him when we got back together because he had been so careful to guard his heart and to guard my heart. Henry Cloud is an amazing Christian psychologist, and he writes a book called Boundaries. If you need help in this area, we need to create boundaries and parameters, not just around our physical bodies and how we navigate, but around our thought processes, around our emotions. Don't dream about forever with somebody that has no intention of spending forever with you. That's going to be so damaging to your heart.
So good. So you got to guard your thoughts.
Yeah.
Last but not least, number 5, I wish every single person knew this. You have a great life. You have a great life. I was talking to my my childhood best friend, best buddy. He's a brother to me now, Andrew Gard. He lives in Florida. And he's talking about just like his time he has today. Like I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go on a run a little bit later. He's like, man, I can't say those statements anymore. He's like, okay, like I got Justice and Adriana. Do I take them on a walk? Can I maybe go on a run at 5 p.m.? And we're just laughing. I was like, man, like when we were single, we could eat what we want, do what we want, go play hoops when we want, watch what we want.
Tyler has to take a lot of pictures in fields of flowers now.
Exactly. And what's interesting is when you're single, your time, oh, it's a gift. Like, you got a great life. You got a great life. Then you get married, you got to share time. Then you have kids, you got to give time. And so don't look at this season. I think one of the things the enemy loves to do is he loves to diminish seasons of our life. Yeah. But the Bible says we go from glory to glory, glory to glory. And so this season of singleness, man, culture or Disney movies with the prince and the princess, I feel like it's diminished how great a single season can be. Yeah. So make the best of it, enjoy it. If I could just give a little bonus thing with this too, like become a great friend. Because like, I get worried of people who don't have a lot of friends or have great friendships that are gonna go into marriage, because marriage is getting married to your best friend and being a best friend to somebody. Yeah. And so if you are somebody who is single, man, enjoy life, create some great friendships, learn how to be a great friend, learn how to listen to other people, learn how to bless other people, learn how to put their needs before yours. And so when you get into marriage, it's not some 0 to 100 mile per hour of actually how to be a great friend. That would be my last but not least. You got anything you want to add to that? Any bonus content?
I love it. That's great. I think we're actually ready to transition now into the marriage Q&A. So we're actually going to now pass this over to some of our marriage ministry group leaders. And our marriage ministry is led by Casey and Jenny Allen. Jenny Allen is a licensed LMFT.
Shout out.
We love this couple so much. They have 3 beautiful daughters, and they have just one of the greatest marriages I've ever seen. So we're going to now pass off some of the questions that you guys have sent in about marriage to this couple. And by the way, our marriage ministry right now, we have marriage groups that are open for you to join.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And these groups are incredible. So after this is over, go online, you're gonna hear a little bit more about them, but missionchurchca.com/groups. But I'm gonna read this first question, which is for the Allens.
Groups plug.
Groups plug. They're amazing.
Da-da-da.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, first question to the Allens. Oh, this is a really good one. How can couples stay close emotionally during this shelter-in-place time? Every day is Groundhog's Day to us, finding ourselves having to fill many roles at once, to be doting parents, homeschool teachers, and employees all at the same time has left us kind of in a funk as a married couple. Allens.
This is a very crazy time, like a particularly crazy time, that's for sure. And so first, I think recognizing that it is crazy and having grace with yourself is going to be pretty important, and having grace with each other. Next, I think whether it's this question or any question when we're talking about marriage, I feel like a really important component of this is feeling like you're on the same team, and that it's not me against Casey or Casey against me, but we're a team together. And so we have good intentions for each other. We want the same things. We want a healthy marriage. We want a healthy family. We might not always sound like that or act like that. That's truly our intention. So I think that's going to be an important part of this. And then the next part would be recognizing the need. What is the need? What is empty? Sometimes we know and we can articulate it really quickly, and sometimes we're not even sure, or maybe we know what the need is, but we don't know what that looks like to get the need met. And so what's super cool is Casey and I spent a couple years in marriage counseling while I was in school, and we used a curriculum that helped identify relational needs. And we're actually going to be launching that in marriage ministry so that you and your spouse can go on a date together in this COVID time, which would probably look like a little dinner by yourselves after the kids are in bed. And then we're going to just give you a guideline and a reference of how to talk about each specific need. So I'm hoping that that's going to help answer this question in a really practical way for folks. So once you know what that need is, then it's a matter of how do you implement whatever you need to make that need happen. And so, again, in the dialogue that you'll have, hopefully, if you do the date nights, you'll be able to discover practical ways of making those needs feel met in your heart. So you can work with your spouse and figure that out.
My thought on this question is that right now, with everybody home, it is hard. There's no question about it. We don't have little kids, we have big kids, and it's still hard. So absolutely, it's a difficult time. As far as emotional needs, meeting those emotional needs, I think the first thing that you can do as a spouse is try to figure out what does my spouse need? What does she need a break? Does she need some fresh air? Does she need me to take the kids for a little while? so that you can even get to a place where we're talking about emotional needs instead of just crisis needs that are happening. So first identifying what your spouse needs, ask them, do you need a break? You want me to take over for a little while? And then once that's taken care of, then you guys, when you have some alone time, and that might be when the kids are down asleep, to ask, how can I help? What can I do to help you today? Because it is hard, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to having this over, us included.
I think developing a pattern is really important, and the pattern that I recommend is 3 questions. And those 3 questions would be, what did you find most satisfying about our relationship today? What did you find least satisfying about our relationship today? And how can I help you? And I know that a lot of people are intimidated by that question of what did you find least satisfying about our relationship today, because that could be scary. Yeah. If we think of it in terms of we're on the same team, we want the same goals, we both want a healthy marriage, then it's easier to receive that answer because Casey's basically giving me the playbook of what works for him, both good and not so good. And a good coach would do the same thing on a team, right? Like they'd say, good job right there, and let's fix this thing that didn't work. And so I encourage you, if you don't already have a time that you've designated to connect with your spouse, to do that on a very regular basis. I would even say daily if possible, that every day you connect on the same time so it just becomes part of the pattern. Casey and I try to in the morning over tea, and sometimes that goes really well, and sometimes I'm really tired. And then we also try in the evening when we walk the dog or the dogs.
Other tips that came to my mind are, if there is a need that you have that's not being met, that you communicate that to your spouse and do it very nicely. So don't be rude about it. Hey babe, make sure the timing's right so that they're not in the middle of a TV show or in work, or where they can actually listen to you during that walk is a good time. And just communicate to, hey babe, I really appreciate that you're doing this, but it would be better, I would think it would be better for me if this would happen. Some kind of gentle reminder for the spouse that maybe they might just be missing the mark a little bit, and they're trying, you recognize that they're trying, but would it be possible to try it this way? Because they don't know what you need unless you let them know what you need. And that's the whole purpose of this conversation, of the exercises, and it makes marriage a lot easier when you know what your spouse is looking for. When we have heated discussions in our house, what we try to do is, one, not throw bad words at people or threaten anything. Try to stay calm. We try to also validate each other, which we weren't good at early in our marriage, but we have gotten pretty good at this point. And what that means basically is that whatever Jen says, if she's got an issue, for me to validate her. So, babe, what you're saying is you had a really hard day. The kids were out of control and you're tired and you need a break. Is that what you're talking about? So before offering any kind of suggestion about her day or a solution, just to help her to understand, I heard what you said. It was a hard day. And then to sympathize, yeah, absolutely. That would be hard for anybody. And then if you have a solution to throw into the mix, then at that point, that's when it's appropriate. Well, I can come home an hour early, I can get a babysitter once they can come out of their house without this COVID thing, or something like that to help your spouse. That usually helps any kind of a discussion that we have. What about you?
I totally agree. Validation is a huge, huge component in our relationship and making it healthier. The other part that I would add is, before it gets heated, to try to not work from that heated place because one of my heroes, John Gottman, he's got a ton of research out there, and that would show that when a couple is having an argument, if one person has an elevated heart rate, then 85% of the time nothing is accomplished. And so, I'm not a gambler, but I wouldn't definitely wouldn't put my money on that. So because we're part of the same team, I want to do what I can to help the team succeed and help the team win. So sometimes that might be saying, Case, I love you and I know we'll get through this. I just can't do it right now. So can we come back in a half hour or an hour, or maybe even let's go to sleep and just agree that we love each other and we'll get to the other side tomorrow morning. I learned in marriage that God could heal wounds that I had through my husband. I had great dads in my life, and there were a little bit of discrepancies there. And so I really did have some daddy wounds, and those of us that are a daughter or know a daughter know that the daddy-daughter wounds can be pretty deep and difficult, to say the least. And so I definitely had those. And then marrying Casey, and to know Casey is to love Casey. Having daughters ourselves, 3 of them, to watch him be a dad to our daughters, to me, is one of the most beautiful things in all of this world, excluding our love from our Father. But seeing it and watching it in real life and having it be so tangible and real and touchable, it just healed my heart, and I feel like a new person in that area because I know what it's like for a daddy to love his daughter, and I feel honored and blessed to have you for my husband.
Thank you. She always tries to make me cry with that question. That close.
Thanks so much to the Allens. We just love you guys so much. What you just shared was so beautiful. You made us
So good. So
cry.
good. So good.
Beautiful. And I just want to go back to fighting fair. We actually learned this from the Allens.
Yes.
We learned about soft starts and hard starts. And
Game changer.
Game changer for our marriage.
If I will. Game changer.
So, if I
I don't know. Keep going.
if I have a need and I approach Tyler aggressively, like let's say it's something like taking out the trash. That's cliche and silly, but Tyler, why don't you ever take out the trash? That's not going to go well. He's not going to respond well to that. That doesn't make him a bad person. He's a human being. But if I, when I'm not angry, softly and gently approach him and say, hey, Tyler, you know what? It would really mean a lot to me if you were
I'm a delicate flower.
in this area. So hard starts do not end well in fights.
90%.
Soft starts, 90% of the time. Soft starts typically have a great outcome. So we learned that from the Allens. Thank you, guys. Now, I actually have the same question that they finished with for Tyler. What is the greatest thing that you've learned in marriage in our 8 years?
So I'm going to say the one that just jumps out to me, because there's a handful. I don't know if I could pick one, but the one that jumps out to me is I feel like when we are clicking on all cylinders, when it is just da-da-da, great marriage, okay? If I were gonna, okay, I gotta stop the support center thing. I don't know why I'm doing that today. If I had to pick one, I would say when we are in like a serving competition.
Oh, that's good.
When I feel like Rachel is just putting my needs first, and when she feels like I'm putting her needs first. And it's so simple. You see in the Bible, I taught on this, I think, a few weeks ago, Mark 10, that the way that you change the world is not through opinions, you change the world through serving. And so I'm not called to change my spouse, I'm called to serve my spouse. And so when I really just start serving Rachel, it sows something really special in the climate of our marriage. And when I feel it the same way, it's the best. So I would say being in a submission competition, serving competition. You'll find this in the Bible, of course, when it talks about loving your wife like Christ loved the church and submit to your husbands. Lydia is just saying a serving competition. So that'd be mine. Hope that was an okay answer.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Good.
So I'm going to now introduce our next couple who will be answering more of your questions. Mike and Janine Lucia. We absolutely love this couple.
Love you guys.
Love you guys. They've been married for 10 years, and they have 3 beautiful daughters. And what I love even about the questions that they're going to answer, they're tough ones, but they've actually been through each one of these scenarios. So they could really share not just even biblical truths, but they can share out of their own experience with you right now. So first question, to the Lucias, what if your spouse is not a believer or does not put Jesus first? And secondly, how can I encourage my spouse to be the spiritual leader that God has created him to be? He goes to church with me, but isn't interested in reading his Bible or incorporating faith into his life throughout the week.
What's up, Mission Church? Mike and Janine Lucia. Happy to be with you for midweek service today, and really happy to dive into these two topics that we want to talk about, mainly because they're personal to both of us. We've navigated both of these situations before. They're difficult. We don't pretend to have this figured out by any means, but we're still standing. We're still here, and so hopefully you guys can pick up a couple things along the way. The first topic that was just talked about was this whole concept of being unequally yoked. You know, what do I do if I'm a believer but my spouse isn't? What do I do if I'm in the Word every day but my spouse won't even open up their Bible? And how do I get there? So it's complicated sometimes, but here's a couple things that might be helpful. Number one, I just want to encourage those that are even asking the question. What a gift that you are to your spouse. The fact that you have a desire in your heart that they would know Jesus, that they would be reading the Word. Man, they will thank you for that someday. So stay encouraged and don't lose hope. Next thing I think that we got to remember is that, you know, we all go on our walks with Jesus, and it all looks different. You know, the timing is different for us. And as much as we would all love to be on the same page 100% of the time, it just isn't life sometimes. And so we got to have patience and just keep it simple. Try not to overcomplicate this stuff. Just remember that what transforms people's lives is the love and the grace of Jesus. It's as simple as that. And so no matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter what you do with your spouse, just always fall back on the fact that if they can experience God's love and God's grace through you, man, you're going to hit a home run. They're going to fall in love with Jesus quicker than they would with anything else that you're going to do. I thought about 3 real practical things to think about as you're navigating through this. The first one is just communicate. None of us are mind readers. So you got to make sure that you at least mention some things to your spouse. Don't go overboard, but at least they got to know that it's important to you. So tell them, look, it's important to me that you know Jesus. It's important to me that our relationship is founded on Christ. Make sure they know it. The second thing is just start small. Maybe it's a daily devotional. You know, don't expect, your spouse, give them a homework assignment that they're going to read through the Bible by next week, right? Hey, here's a daily devotional that we're going to either start the day or end the day. Tell them a little something encouraging about what you read in the Word, just to get their appetite going. Yeah. The last one is pray, don't push. Now, your desires may be strong that you really want your spouse to be there. That's an awesome thing, but pray for them. Don't push them. You want your spouse to fall in love with the Word, to fall in love with Jesus because they have a genuine desire, because they've encountered Him and they want to do it, not because they feel pushed by you. So what you can do is that you can partner with Jesus. You can partner with God to lead your spouse deeper. So we've gone through this before. Janine's going to mention a couple things about what our journey has looked like.
Yeah, so I just want to piggyback off of Mike, and the number 3 is pray, don't push, because in our journey, when we first started out, we were unequally yoked, and I was the one that came to know Christ and walk with Christ first, and it provided some difficulty in our marriage. And so anyway, at first I tried to push Mike into faith. I wanted him so badly to be a godly husband, so I did everything I could to, tell him and push him and encourage him, and what I ultimately found out is that none of it really worked. In fact, it was doing the exact opposite. It was pushing him away. He really needed to encounter Jesus, and like he said earlier, encounter the love and grace of Jesus for himself, so that he had a true desire to want to do those things. And so what the Lord ultimately showed me was that it was 2 things. Number 1 was that I needed to partner with him, the Lord, in order to pray for Mike to encounter Jesus, to encounter the love and grace of the Lord. So that way he would have his own desire in his heart, so that God could put that desire in his heart and soften his heart and give him that desire to have an intimate relationship with the Lord. And so I just don't underestimate your prayers. Your prayers are powerful. And the Bible is very clear that God wants to bless you with the desires of your heart if it aligns with his will. And a marriage centered in Christ and you unified with your spouse with Christ at the center is absolutely on God's heart, and it is part of his will. And so if that's your desire, pray that to come to pass. Pray for God to move on your marriage and on your spouse, and trust, surrender it to the Lord and let God do the work, because he will fight this battle for you and he will do the work. But we have to get out of the way. We have to move out of the way so that God can be God and do what God does best. So that was number one. Number two is God showed me that it was really important that I was obedient and that I set a good example for my spouse. So what does that look like? That meant me getting up every day and being in the Word every day, and having that obedience and being consistent with it. So that was really, so the Lord showed me two things: pray for your spouse, get out of the way, let me move. And number two, you do what you're supposed to be doing, you be obedient and be that good example for your spouse as well. And then God can work on your spouse with those things.
Not just going to end on this because I'm going a little bit long, but this is such an important question. The first time that I experienced really the true love of Jesus was through my spouse. It changed my life. It changed our marriage. And so we haven't always been where we are. And again, we always say we always got a long way to go. So we don't pretend to have this thing figured out. But man, is it possible? So hopefully that instilled a little bit of hope in those that are out there. We're happy to tackle this one, or at least attempt to tackle this one as well, because this one also hits close to home. This one's personal for us. We've been through it, and we're happy to talk about it. So Janine's going to do the bulk of it. I'm going to turn it over to her.
So a little bit about our journey. When Mike and I got married, we wanted to have children right away. And we never anticipated that we were going to have difficulties, that miscarriages, infertility, IVF, that any of that would be a thing that we would have to, that would be our reality. But it soon became our reality. And so we have 3 girls. We have Ella 8, Ava 6, and Olivia's 4. But what people don't see is in between all of that, there were 4 miscarriages and a round of IVF. So we know the loss, we know the grief, we know the emotions that come with this. We know the stress very well. It's very personal, like Mike said. But what I want to press upon you is that even though this can be a painful and stressful season, that with pressing into the Lord, it can actually become a season of blessing. And that's what happened to us, is that Jesus turned our circumstances and our pain and just used it for good. And when I was struggling after my second miscarriage, I can't explain the loss and the grief that comes with that. And I just had a really hard time navigating those emotions on my own. And so I turned to Jesus, and the first thing that he brought me to in the Word of God was Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans of a future and plans of hope." And that's a real now word for you if you are struggling with this, or anyone who's going through a really painful, difficult season. The Word of God says, "I will never leave you or forsake you." And he has not left you. He has not forsaken you. He knows the plans that he has for you, and they're for future, they're for a hope, they're for good. And on the other side of this season of pain, on this other side of this negative season or stressful season, there is a promise, there is blessing, there is good. And God doesn't waste anything. So as I started pressing into more of what God was telling me, this future and this hope, what God did in this season was he brought me into deeper intimacy with him. And out of this season, I started taking off in my faith, taking off in my walk with Christ, taking off spiritually, and just becoming more intimate with Jesus. And then through that, he showed me how to take off in my marriage. He showed me how to navigate a healthy marriage and how to have a stronger marriage, even in tough seasons. And so not only through that pain did my faith take off to deeper places, but also my marriage ended up taking off and becoming stronger out of it. And he has that same thing for you. So we need to press into the rock. We need to press into Jesus Christ and have him be the rock of our foundation. Have him show us how to navigate these painful seasons. And on the other side of it, like I said, there is so much blessing and goodness that will come from it.
Oh man, thank you so much, Lucias. That was
Love
it
you
was so
guys.
good.
It was so good.
It was so good. It's so good. It's so good. So here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take the same question you asked me last segment. I'm going to ask you now. What is the greatest thing you've learned in the 8 years of being married to the greatest man on the planet?
It's true. You are. You are my favorite person in the whole world.
Well.
The greatest person I've ever known. So Tyler and I just celebrated our 8-year anniversary about a week ago. So I've actually been thinking a lot about this. And I think the greatest thing that I've learned in marriage is, of course, we all talk about communication being so important and learning how to communicate with each other, right? But I think just as importantly, you have to pick a partner that will actually listen to what you're trying to communicate to them and will actually care about what you're trying to communicate to them. Because I could be the most gifted communicator, but if you weren't listening, if you didn't care, if you didn't dance with me and those things, it wouldn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So, when Tyler and I first got married, I like art. I like trips to museums. I like taking pictures. We've heard all these stories, right? And when I first got married, we had a little bit of trouble because I kind of expected my partner to like all the same things that I did. But the problem is I didn't marry a woman. I married a man, like a real strapping man who loves sports and guy things. And, at first I just sort of sullenly was disappointed that you didn't like the things that I did. But I think what I've come to love so much about our marriage is that when I actually stepped up and started communicating what my needs were to you, every single time without fail, you have always adjusted your behavior to meet those needs. And that to me is way more romantic than Tyler just knowing, every thought in my head. That's actually not that romantic to me, to have somebody that's exactly like me. That would be easy for him to love me. But to have somebody that doesn't necessarily always understand where I'm coming from or what my love language is, but to make the decision and make the sacrifice to change his behavior to meet that need, I think that's so unbelievably romantic. And I'm just so thankful that I have a partner that does that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, truly. And it's actually made me, final point, it's actually made me really careful about what I do communicate as a need to my spouse, because I actually don't want to take advantage of Tyler because he's been so great with that, Tyler, I need a mink coat. I don't need a mink coat.
I don't even know what that is.
Also,
so
what am I, a 1960s debutante? That was a weird example. But anyway, my point is...
I also don't know what debutante is.
I've been really careful even about what I communicate as needs, because I know he will always listen and he will always adjust his behavior. It's actually made me more careful so as not to take advantage of that. So I love you.
It's a great thing you learned. I like it. So here's what's going to happen. We are going to go to our last couple of the night. Jill and Todd Weinbergs, shout out. Love you guys. They've been married for 26 years. Wow. Come on now. Hashtag goals. And they also have 2 amazing kids. Love them. It just... what I love about all these couples is if you get to watch the way they've built their life. When I was single, I would ask married couples all the time, just teach me about your life. And I feel like it just set me up to win. And so just so thankful for these 3 couples and what they've just been pouring out tonight. So we're gonna go to the Weinbergs and they're gonna finish this off. Todd and Jill, here you go.
I have said this before, those of you who know me, who have been in our marriage group or whatnot, that I've said that I think it's amazing that you could take 2 people, 2 completely different people, bring them together, and they spend an entire lifetime together. It's a miracle, really, if you think about it. And I fortunately lucked out, thank God, but I know many people, they are together for a lifetime, and you look at them and go, gosh, yeah, they don't seem that happy. They're together, but it doesn't seem that successful, really, as a marriage. And I think that by the grace of God, I think that we're 26 years in right now. I think we can say that we've got a high level of satisfaction in our marriage, and I think it's because we've had to work really hard to get there. And so for me, we're going to talk separately here, but for me, I would say there's a few things. Number one is just to stay committed to the learning process, to always be willing to learn and discover about yourself, to improve upon yourself, and then to learn about your spouse as well. Just be committed to the learning and growing process. And then I would say that make it a point to have frequent check-ins with your spouse, right? Like, don't ever let a week or several days go by without really making an emotional connection with your spouse. And I don't mean just like, hey, how was your day? It's deeper than that. Like, to literally sit face to face, whether it's over dinner or just a quiet moment, and to deep dive and say, ask questions. Like, I love Jill. She'll ask me, so what's rattling around in your head right now? And it's a good way of really peeling it back. So definitely be checking in with each other. And then finally, there's these couple of books out there that you've all heard of, the 5 Love Languages, and His Needs, Her Needs, and another book called How We Love. These are great books to engage with. And also the point of these books is really to understand your spouse and how they desire to be loved. Because we all are individuals, we all want to be loved, receive love, and give love differently. And so I think it's very important that we are focused on that.
What I love about this question is that it takes into consideration the fact that there's a lot of changes that you go through in a marriage, from where you live to having kids to your own unique spiritual journeys and personal growth journeys. And so it made me think about how when we accept Christ, we accept him in a moment, but then we spend a lifetime through a sanctification process of becoming more like Christ. And in the same way, when we say I do, we are married in that moment, but then our marriage process is also a sanctification process of learning how to die to our selfish tendencies and learn how to understand our spouse and work on ourselves so that we can grow together and have a healthier relationship. So when I think about this, it reminds me of Francis Chan. He said that most marriage problems aren't really marriage problems, they're God problems. And what that means to me is, if we are not intentionally working on having an intimate relationship with Christ personally, we really don't have very much to bring to the table to our marriages. And so much of what we bring to the table has to do with where we're at spiritually. And if I'm not in a place of really feeling God's love and acceptance over me, then I'm operating out of unhealthy places. I'm not going to be bringing my best self to Todd. And so that's a really important piece always at the end of the day, is just understanding the need of experiencing intimacy with God. And then I would also just add that when you're going through these different stages in life and raising kids and different stages of raising kids and different career challenges, all that you face, I think we've had to learn to give each other space for wherever we're at in the journey. And whether that's sifting through spiritual issues or having a big life transition, a lot of times we bring our own personality, our own lens that we see the world through, and we expect our spouse to respond the same way we would, or to have our same personality or do things the way we would. And I think we just have to give each other a ton of grace and space. And as long as we see that our spouse is owning their stuff and working on it, that's all we can really ask of them. We can't ask much more. And it gives us an opportunity to be an encouragement and a support to our spouses when we can recognize what they need and also recognize the gifts that we see in them and try to encourage and draw those out over time.
We have been empty nesters for about 2 years.
Year and a half.
Year and a half, yeah. And when we got the question, I immediately thought, there's really no one size fits all for this question. It's very much across the board. We've talked to different parents and across the spectrum from I can't wait for my kids to leave the house to I'm going to have an emotional breakdown and I'm going to be so depressed when they leave. And I'm glad to say I think we found ourselves somewhere in the middle, kind of bouncing off the different spectrums a little bit as well. But I don't know. I think that if I had any advice looking back now, I would say that probably the first and foremost bit of advice would be to get your house, your marital, your relational house in order before the kids leave, because everything gets magnified when the kids are gone, you know? And so I think that it's just super important if there are any little issues that are kind of nipping at your heels, to really take a look at those before the kids leave and to start to dial things in.
My heart really goes out to the moms experiencing empty nest because it's hard. It's a big life transition, so it's going to be challenging for both parents. But there's a lot of research that actually says that moms that have stayed home to raise kids experience the loss on a completely different level. And it was a big transition for me, not gonna lie. I had a lot of concerns going into Ben's senior year before he left for college and just wanting to savor every moment. And I'm really glad that I did. But when he was gone, I was confronted with the question of what is going to be meaningful and purposeful in my life moving forward. And it's a big, scary question. But what I found is that there's tons of things that are still meaningful and purposeful in all kinds of new ways in this next season of life. And we spend so much energy trying to keep our kids from being little terrors and helping them to become responsible contributors to society. And that takes a ton of time and energy. But then once they're gone, there's a little bit more space to think about each other, for one, which is great, as well as what are the unique gifts that God's given me and Todd to use in the next season of life. And so it's an exciting time to delve into that. And I would just say, whether you have littles at home or you're about to launch your last kid this fall, I think it's always helpful to be pressing into what are the passions in my heart and the gifts that I have that can be a benefit to others and can be used in a greater picture in God's kingdom. How can I start to investigate what those are and explore them and maybe begin developing them at any stage of life? But I do really want to say it's been an exciting and fun time and not nearly as scary as we thought it would be. I would have to say that spending hours arguing is not fun. It's just really a total waste of time. Would you say?
Absolutely. No fun.
Yeah.
No fun at all.
No fun. So since we're both motivated by fun, we realize that it is way easier to just own our stuff and say, I am so sorry. I'm going to work on that. And let's get back to having fun.
Absolutely. We burned way too many long evenings and would drag out and knock down fights that did not need to go like that. Remember that time you tried to climb out a window? Yeah, we've definitely had our share, but we've definitely also learned that it's way better, way more productive to own your stuff, apologize as quick as you can, man up, guys, if you need to. Ladies, you know what to do. Say you're sorry, forgive each other, and move on. It's way more fun. Don't burn those cycles of being bitter and resentment and letting the resentment build. It's no good.
Oh, thank you guys so much. That was such a beautiful,
So good.
beautiful
So good.
segment.
I think
We
one
really
more time.
appreciate you guys.
Da 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 da. That good. Is that good? I don't know. I'm sorry if that annoyed everybody tonight. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We
but
love
not sorry. Okay, go ahead.
We love you guys. We're so thankful for you, to all the couples that that shared tonight. And I just want to add this as we wrap up now. Everybody that shared tonight, we're all a work in progress, right? Like all of our relationships are under construction. I mean,
So good.
Tyler and I got in a fight preparing the content for this, right?
Yes, and I forgave Rachel. I did.
So I just want to say we're all in a season of real pressure right now, and sometimes pressure can reveal cracks. But don't feel shame about this. Don't feel scared about this. Think of this as just an incredible opportunity to lean into some of these areas, to get healthy as individuals, to get healthy as a couple, and to come out of this stronger, because pressure will also reveal the strength when this is over too. So we just scratched the surface. I would encourage you guys to get into a marriage group.
Come on.
We're gonna continue these conversations in our marriage groups. If you're single, pretty much every other group is available to you. We have activity groups, we have serve groups, we have Bible studies for men, women, for youth. Get into a group. This is where, we really continue these conversations and go deeper and actually allow the Lord to really heal things in our hearts. So thanks so much for joining us. This was so fun.
Hey,
I love doing this with you.
We should do this again sometime.
We should do it again sometime.
Well, yeah, we should plant a church together. Did it 2 years ago. Hardest thing ever. We survived.
It really was.
And now this might be the second hardest thing we've ever done.
Just second.
Quarantine.
Second hardest thing. And don't forget to join us this Sunday at 8:45 a.m., 10:15 a.m., and 11:45 a.m. for church. We can't wait to see you.
Yeah.
We can't wait to see you in person. We're counting down the days, but until then, we'll see you online.
See you Sunday.
And oh my gosh, that's it. But I just don't know how to end it.
That's it. That's a word. Tyler, Rachel, back to you guys.
No.